Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, February 7th, and this week, rides get more pets, drivers' pay goes down, and Waymo hits up Austin. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Bryant Greening. Bryant, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jared. Great to be back.
It is, and we got some love letters last week. I think we should start off with those and some nice viewer comments.
Yes, please.
Great way to start this off. Let me see if we can cue them up. Here's the first one. Terrific job, guys. Keep up the good work. This is from Traveler7210. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching and supporting us. We've been doing this for a while, so it's nice to get some nice comments. We also have a response to something we talked about a couple weeks ago. This is from Frankie Carrier. Frank Carrier. They commented, I also noticed too why the IRS waited until November to implement this new law. Various drivers might have met the threshold by that time. So that's actually pretty interesting. We were talking, that's I think in reference to the change of the IRS when Torsten was on. And I think Torsten mentioned that, right? The idea that they waited so more people could file, correct? I think we discussed that.
Yeah, I think that's something that Torsten went over. But yeah, I'm happy to see the comments. Really, this is why we do this, is to interact with the driver community. We want to make sure that we're, giving valuable information and starting a conversation. So thank you guys for commenting, and please continue.
Yes,
we love
please.
to see.
You guys are the best. We love you guys. And that being said, we're going to start with our first story. Uber is making it easier to ride with service animals, and this is from The Verge. And they reported, quote, Uber introduced a new feature designed to make it easier for people with disabilities to ride with service animals. For years, Uber's policies towards service animals has been in accordance with state and federal law. They are allowed to ride it at all times at no extra cost. But now the company is allowing customers to self-identify as owners of service animals in order to give drivers more visibility when to expect a furry companion. This feature also includes a warning to drivers to avoid canceling rides or discriminating against customers with service animals. It goes into detail stating that if a driver cancels the trip, quote, they will get a message saying any driver who violates this policy may permanently lose access to the platform. Brian, I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to deactivated drivers over the issue of whether it's a service animal or not. This seems like a nice thing for riders. It seems like it could become a nightmare for drivers. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing we need to highlight is that federal law does require that service animals are allowed in transportation vehicles. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Drivers need to allow access to service animals to comply with the law. I think the issue in the past has been that Uber has done a really poor job of educating drivers about the law and about what's required. So in the past, drivers have seen passengers come up with animals, and there's not been any way to identify, is it a service animal? Is it just somebody who wants to take their cat or dog on the ride with them? And it's put drivers in a really hard position. I think by highlighting the fact that service animals are permitted, generally speaking, I think we should be over-inclusive rather than under-inclusive in this situation. There's going to be some people who take advantage of it and are transporting pets that are not actually service animals. But we want drivers to understand that when somebody has a service animal with them, the ride needs to be accepted. The service animal gets to come on on the ride, and more importantly, they understand the repercussions for not following that rule. In the past, these rules have been buried on Uber's website in the terms of service, and many drivers didn't really know that they existed or didn't fully understand them. I think these pop-up notifications, while they sound scary and they sound harsh, they're actually a good thing, because they're going to help drivers understand what they need to do to perform the job legally and to stay on the platform with full access. Like, I'd rather there be more transparency than less. And if this is Uber's policy, then we might as well put it out there so that drivers can do what they need to do to keep their jobs.
Yeah, I agree. The transparency is important. And like you said, this stuff was always buried before, and every state had it different. It became very confusing. It does seem, though, the way that they're writing this, it seems like if you're a driver and you get this request, it really is cancel at your own peril. Basically, they're saying that you need to take this ride. I guess the good news about that is, at least like you said, they're telling you this is the situation. But that's my only concern about it. We've seen this before with cancellations or even cancellation rates in general. Drivers getting these warnings and then they get deactivated.
Right.
So I guess that's the only thing that drivers have to look out for. It also doesn't say when this feature is coming out yet. I haven't seen it. We're referring to The Verge, but another article may have covered it, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, and
But
I would
yeah,
also like, we haven't seen this in practice yet, but I would say that there's probably going to be some leeway here where, if you cancel one ride and that's the only ride that you canceled and you don't have a pattern of declining rides that are for people with service animals, I would anticipate that that's not going to get you kicked off the platform. Now, if you're canceling ride after ride after ride, you're going to likely be flagged. Um, we need to say with the caveat, Uber's being clear that you could be deactivated for canceling the ride. It might be one and done, but I would guess that it's going to be looking at patterns and looking at drivers who are just unwilling to accept these types of requests.
right, and we certainly hope so. And so, drivers that are listening and tuning in now, once this starts rolling out, we'd love to hear from you and see if this is already deployed or when it does. We'd love to hear what you guys say, what you guys think about it, what your opinions are of this article, because it's going to play a part in every driver's life. That's what Uber's telling you. This is coming. It's going to be part of the system now. So moving on, the second story, driver pay has dropped since minimum wage was enacted. This is from the Boston Globe, and they reported, quote, contrary to the idea that the new minimum wage would increase pay, a number of veteran drivers interviewed by the Boston Globe said their overall earnings have taken a hit since Uber and Lyft's new minimum hourly wage went into effect in Massachusetts. Intended to give them greater stability and the ability to make more money, drivers said that instead the new earnings base seems to be functioning as a cap of sorts. They also do indicate that it's not that these drivers are making below new minimum, it's just that it's become much harder for them to make more. Now, this is according to 10 local drivers who talked to the Globe, some who said that previously, with little effort, they could average 40 or even $50 an hour. As usual, they mentioned in the article, data analysis of this earnings is limited, but drivers do point out several factors that could be contributing to the earnings pitch, which include more low-paying rides and less surge pricing, which they can say boost earnings up to 30%. So this is the first time I've seen an article about this with the new minimum wage. This is obviously a small pool of people. They said they only interviewed 10, but it's hard to discredit kind of the idea of that the cap. We've obviously seen how dramatic it is in New York, what they're trying to do. But this makes sense. Maybe this is what they're doing. They're limiting surge pricing and limiting rides.
Right. I think that's exactly what we're seeing. And that was the concern with some of these minimum wage laws, is that they would come back to harm drivers in a different way. So certainly we want to make sure that drivers are able to earn a livable wage. There were periods of time in certain groups of drivers who were not earning the state minimum wage, the federal minimum wage. And that's unacceptable. There has to be a floor that complies with the law and allows people to pay their bills. But when laws like this get passed, we've seen Uber and Lyft come in and take other drastic measures to limit what the top earners can make. So it's kind of this rush to the middle, where people who typically would earn higher wages because they knew which rides to accept, they would work the right hours to make the most money. They're seeing their ability to earn shrink, whereas some of the drivers who might want to work less profitable hours, say in the middle of the day, as opposed to bars closing in the middle of the night, their wages are rising. And this rush to the middle obviously has negative impact on those who are used to kind of using the system and learning the system and understanding how to make those big bucks. This is, I guess it's not to be unexpected based on what we've seen Uber and Lyft do in other areas. But it is disheartening to see that they're taking proactive measures to keep the high earners down, because that all that's doing is offsetting the cost. That's meaning they're not losing any money in this proposition. The bottom earners make more, the top earners make less. They're kind of Uber and Lyft are in the same position that they were before, which really wasn't the spirit of the law.
Yeah, I would love to hear about. I don't know if they're going to do this, of course, it just depends, but it would be really interesting to have a follow up of that article in a couple weeks. I think the key here is I understand, like you said, you can't punish the top earners, but the question is, does this level the scale that they have consistent pay? That, okay, they're not making less, but they're not having their those high days that they used to have, but they're also not having the low days where they just, it's a week of almost no rides or low paying rides that kills them. And,
Right.
that's the idea of what the minimum wage is supposed to do. And it's hard to tell from this article because, again, they plucked 10 local drivers and said, hey, how's it going? And 10 drivers are saying, well, I can't make as much as I was before. But it does not say, over X amount of weeks, they have decreased pay by 10 or 20% or 5% or whatever. So I think we have to take that in consideration too, that this is a very small qualitative study, if you even want to call it that. But you're right. I don't know if this could be. It's hard to tell if this is a tactic that Uber's trying to cut it down, or it's just simply the cause and effect of doing something like this.
Right. Yeah, I think the one thing we just need to see is like, let's look at a year's worth of earnings, look at the amount of time that a driver spent on the road, look at the dollars that they put in their pocket, and compare that to before the minimum wage. That's going to be the only real way for us to understand exactly how this is affecting, the typical driver. So I think we're one tax year away from seeing exactly how this is affecting drivers and, how big or little those effects are.
Yeah, 100%. And to our final story here, Uber is getting ready for Waymos in Austin. This is from CNBC, and they reported, quote, ride-hailing and food delivery app Uber is opening its interest list to users in Austin, Texas, who want to be first in line for Waymo robotaxis there. The company said in a statement that users will, quote, be able to travel across 37 square miles of Austin, from Hyde Park to downtown to Montopolis, when the Uber Waymo service launches soon. The list allows users to receive Uber updates and bolsters their odds of being matched with an Waymo autonomous vehicle upon launch. The Waymo rides in Austin will only be available through the Uber app, unlike in San Fran and LA, where the riders hail them through the Waymo One app. Brian, the reason I keep bringing these articles up, and I'm sure some drivers are like, why? We get it, it's coming. I'm curious to see how this is all going to play out. We've talked about this before. And there's actually, I haven't read it yet. There's a great article that I saw that says, is Uber and Waymo friend or foe? And I think that's what's fascinating about this. Like, they're working together here in Austin, but like it says in other places, it's the Waymo app. I'm sort of just interested in covering these stories because what is the future going to hold? Because they're playing nice right now. Is it going to be that way forever? I don't know.
Yeah, right now they are playing nice, and it makes sense for them to be playing nice. I think they both need each other. Waymo is moving into markets that Uber already owns. Uber's obviously looking to get into the autonomous business. That they've been trying to do that independently for a while. I think they've realized that their technology is just not up to par. So it is kind of a marriage made in heaven here. Uber and Lyft, or Uber and Waymo, can come together, really take over the autonomous market in certain cities. But as we've talked about in the past, I think the larger picture here, the big picture, is that Waymo is going to launch its own service in a lot of these areas. I think they're going to get people used to taking self-driving vehicles. They're going to get people used to accepting deliveries in self-driving vehicles. And then once that has really that template has played out and the kinks have been worked out, we're going to see Waymo try to take that space. I'm not sure that that it's necessarily a smart move for Uber to give Waymo that introduction, but Dara's done some, had a lot of success, so I'm not I can't
Yeah.
criticize too much, but it seems like a short-term solution that might create some larger problems for Uber down the road.
Yeah, it feels like a temporary alliance until things really heat up. I mean, Dar said in a recent article, he said in a few articles, he said, look, we're 5 to 10 years away from just kind of full autonomous vehicles pretty much running everything. So they may slowly play nice for a while, but I think there's going to be a turning point, like you said, where one of them is going to say, wait a minute, we don't need the other. And I'm kind of hedging my bets on Waymo right now. They seem to have the angle, but like you said, she's not a dumb guy. They're not going to just hand it over. So that's why this is really fascinating to me to see when that other shoe drops and what happens after that.
Yeah, and
We'll see.
just one other thing that we don't know is, what kind of contracts are in place here. There might be non-compete language where perhaps Waymo's saying, okay, we will collaborate with you in Austin. Uber, you can have Austin and you can use our self-driving vehicles, but through that experience, Waymo is getting a ton of information, a ton of knowledge about the way that its vehicles are working, about any issues that are arising. They can work all that stuff out. And then when they want to move to the next city, they don't have that learning curve. So that may
Right.
be, a path as well, where Waymo's agreeing to give certain cities away with the idea that maybe they could take over the rest of the country at a different time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We don't know that, and obviously that has not come to light, and it may never. So that's certainly a good point. And again, as I always like to say, time will tell. That is our stories for this week. So Brian, as always, I'll let you have the final say before we head into the weekend.
Yeah, just always remind everybody that Legal Rideshare is available for free legal consultations for any accident or injury claim. If you find yourself injured on the job, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We can help you recover things like lost wages, pain and suffering, loss in normal life, cost of medical treatment, you name it, whatever issue you're dealing with or loss you've sustained, our lawyers can help put that money back in your pocket and fight on your behalf.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.